As you notice, most of the stuff involves slip casting. My whole career in ceramics has been trying to take industrial processes and make art out of them. One of the industrial processes is to, like Kohler makes toilets out of liquid clay, that's slip. And I make my own molds, and so I can just make a whole series of things with slip. Some things in art require a little bit of preparation, and ceramics is one of those things, unfortunately. I mean, you can go in and grab clay and you can throw it around and do stuff like that, and you know, who knows, nowadays that may be in a gallery in New York, there's no doubt about that. But I like the fact that I can make a bunch of stuff. And a friend of mine, Peter Volkas, always said when he was making the bronze sculptures, he said, I make my own found objects. And I guess that's what I do. I make a whole bunch of stuff. I put it in plastic bags, and I keep it moist. And then when I've got a bunch of this stuff, then I say, okay, I'm going to make something. And so then I grab these pieces and I start making from there. So that's part of it. I approach ceramics from a different perspective than most people who do ceramics, and that is, I'm a fake ceramist. So I never had a course in ceramics. Both my degrees are in painting, and I'm very much interested in art, making art.
Well, Don's probably best known for his work at Madison during the 60s and 70s, because he really reinvigorated using salt glazing as a technique, exploring new forms and new colors that were previously not used in that process. There's also wood-fired ceramics. So when Don moved to Arizona, he still did a little bit of salt glazing, but mostly wood-fired, and he worked in traditional Japanese wood-fired kilns called anagamas, large chambered kilns that would take 6 or 7 days to fire and use 7 or 8 cords of wood. So he would be using less glaze and relying more on the natural wood ash that would melt during that process, as well as the patterns the flames made on the surface of the clay. Yeah, so the history of salt glazing, it started in Europe, primarily in Germany. So it was a way to fire a large quantity of crocks and jugs. This was all pre-plastic, and how people stored their food or drink. And they introduced generally rock salt into the kiln at a certain temperature, which would vaporize, and the sodium for the salt would create its own glaze. So depending on how much salt you put in the kiln affected the texture and pattern of the pieces coming out of the kiln. So if it was a heavy salt, they usually called it a orange peel effect, where it looked like the skin of oranges, where it was all spotted. But it was a good way to fire a lot of quantities of ceramics at once. A lot of Don's glory years happened in Madison. I know he thought fondly of all the experiences he had here, and I called up a few of his former students in the last month, and you know, they all couldn't say enough about the impact Don had on both their life and their work. So.
Well, these are posters that were done mainly in the 60s and 70s. I was pretty much the poster man for the art department for a long time. I was involved with the visiting artist program to a large extent. I usually had to schlep them around, so I was given the task of making the poster for their lecture or something like that. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I don't know how many posters I made over the years. This is just a tip of the iceberg, really. But they were most of the artists that saw the posters I made for them were pleased with them. It's an easy form for me to take. It's fast. It's direct. I guess in my more socially commenting art, it's about collaging, and I do enjoy collaging. I've always been a fan of collage people like Schwitters and some of these people that weren't painters necessarily, but they were artists by different means. I can't draw with a toot, so I compensate for that by using photography, using elements of newspapers, magazines, etc., to accomplish some of my work. And I also use in some of the work that is a little more abstract now, that really aren't posters but are more in the painting realm, and they're kind of a cross between painting and printmaking because I use both techniques. I was at the first riot, a big riot on the university campus, with the San Francisco Mime Troupe leading the group of students up the hill, and then having the police department beat them on the head with clubs and stuff. After that, I thought I'd never want to go to another one of these. I felt so bad about it that I just decided to stay back and make prints and make posters of my feelings at the time.